Well, folks, it's 6:30. We are still expecting Commissioner Almeida to join us in a few minutes, but we'll go ahead and begin and call to order the February 3rd meeting of the Santa Barbara County Citizens Independent Redistricting Committee. Ms. Tilton, could you take a roll call, please?
Yes, District 1 Commissioner Katz has issued her letter of resignation that I'll be officially announcing under public comment, so she is not present. District 1 Commissioner Twibell.
Present.
District 2 Commissioner McClintock.
Present.
District 2 Commissioner Turley.
Present.
District 3 Commissioner Bradley.
Present.
District 3 Commissioner Hudley.
Present.
District 4 Commissioner Bray.
Present.
District 4 Commissioner Ochoa.
Present.
District 5 Commissioner Rios.
Present.
And a member at large, Commissioner Almeida. Has he joined us yet? And Chair Morris.
Present. So we have a quorum, so we will continue with the meeting. Again, we're gonna take care of a couple of administrative things and then do public comments. So agenda item 3, is there a motion to be made here, or are we just moving forward again? Seeing none, we'll move on to item number 4. Does anyone have any ex parte communications to share with the commission and the public? Again, seeing none, we will come back to item number 2, public comment. Ms. Tilton, would you again explain to folks how this process will work and lead us through the list of interested speakers?
Yes, today's meeting is remote, virtual only through the Zoom webinar information identified on the public agenda. The meeting is being recorded and will be available for viewing on the internet at www.countyofsb.org/redistricting.sbc. Public participation during the meeting can only be done through the Zoom webinar link or by calling the phone number provided on the agenda. For those using the Zoom webinar link, please indicate that you wish to speak during public comment by selecting the raise your hand feature, and staff will know to call on you. Attendees by phone can raise your hand by pressing *9. When it's your turn to speak, we will announce you by caller ID or your phone number. When called upon, please state your name for the record. We reserve the right to mute microphones or for profane, harassing, or offensive language, or for speaking beyond the time limit set. The time limit for public comment is set at 3 minutes. Recordings of the commission meetings, agendas, supplemental materials, and minutes of the commission are available on the internet at the same redistricting webpage cited earlier, which is www.countyofsb.org/redistricting.sbc.
Thank you. And before we start with speakers, let me remind everybody that this particular public comment window is for general comments only, not for items further down on the agenda. We will take public comment again on items, particularly on item 5, and I would suspect around item number 8. So general comments that do not relate to anything from item 5 on, we'll take now.
And we have a request to speak from Lee Heller, followed by Scott Rafferty.
Ms. Heller, you're back on your form.
I am Chair Morris and Commissioners, and I haven't seen the agenda since it may have been updated, so these comments may be out of place. I just heard about Commissioner Katz resigning, and I just wanted to express my regret and my appreciation for her service. That's it.
Thank you, ma'am.
The next speaker is Scott Rafferty, followed by Mary Hudson.
Good evening, Mr. Rafferty.
Good evening. I would wish you well, and if there were any prospect that any circumstances that I would be selected as legal counsel, I would withdraw. I was disturbed to see earlier today the posting of a communication from the Nielsen Merksimer firm that should have been sent to both me and Mr. Wucher before the Monday meeting. And I was also disturbed Monday not to be provided documents that I felt were material to my presentation. I it was profoundly wrong to think that you were immune from or entitled to the type of deference that most expert commissions get. You're going to need Mr. Wucher, who's an excellent litigator. It's really distressing to see you not comply with the Brown Act, which is the mere floor. You have to be aiming at the ceiling of participation. It is downright odd to have Dr. Johnson and his associates functioning as a parliamentarian and controlling the release of your records, making statements for you in the press. This is just not right. I know there's been a recent response by Mr. Wucher. I'm afraid I'm going to have to do the same. The real point here is not about me. I don't really care. But you're really disparaging the very concept of independent redistricting. You're the first general law county to undertake this. I wanted to be part of making this a success, but last night the city of Napa rejected it, and I wanted to use you as an example of how this could work. It's looking like it's not a very good example. So please right your ship, because this is not going to succeed in attracting the public to participate. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Very quickly, before we go to the next speaker, can I just note for the record that Commissioner Olmedo has joined us.
Thank you. Next speaker is Mary Hudson, followed by Peggy Wilson.
Good evening, Ms. Hudson. Looks like you're on mute, ma'am. Ms. Hudson, we're not able to hear you. Can you check and see if you're
Oh, yeah.
mute? There we go.
How's-
Now we got
Okay,
you.
sorry. Thank you so much.
No problem.
Well, good evening, commissioners. Congratulations for having such a commission. It's a great thing to have. People should be involved in things like this. My name is Mary Hudson, of course, and I'm calling tonight just to recommend that Cheryl Trotsky be added to your commission. She lives in Supervisor District 1, and she will make an excellent member of your committee. Her selection will satisfy the need for 3 Republicans on the commission for a balanced bipartisan committee and represent an important part of the Santa Barbara County community. So thank you so much for your time and all the work and effort you all are putting into this.
Thank you, ma'am.
Welcome. The next speaker is Peggy Wilson. And I don't see any other hands raised after Peggy Wilson.
Very good. Good evening, Ms. Wilson. Ms. Wilson, we're not hearing you if you're speaking yet. We try one more time and see. Oh, it looks like we've lost her. She's still in the audience, or did she drop out altogether? Looks like she may have dropped out altogether.
Chair Morris, she's in the system.
Okay. Is she available, or I see a hand raised for a phone number ending 5545. Is that her as well? Or is that someone else?
Chair Morris, her software was not up to date, so I had to promote her to panelist temporarily.
Okay. Ms. Wilson, are you with us?
We saw her video temporarily, then it went away.
Well, perhaps we could invite her to submit her comments in writing and to make sure that we get those. It doesn't appear that we're going to make a technical connection here this evening.
And we have a request to speak from phone number 805-895-5545.
Good evening. Could you unmute and identify yourself and make your comment, please? Let me try that one more time. If you're calling in on phone number ending in 5545, we're ready for your comment, but we'll need you to unmute and identify yourself.
Okay, this is Barbara Battistini, and I don't know what happened. I guess can you hear me now?
We can, ma'am. Yes.
Okay. So goodness, I am here to just do the same thing, and I am actually kind of lost in my script here, but I wanted to recommend Cheryl Trotsky to also to be added as I'm really sorry. Something has gone wrong on my cell phone.
That's okay.
So, okay, I know what's wrong now. Can you give me 1 second?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I'm so sorry. So good evening, and you guys have been very patient. My name is Barbara Battistini, and I am calling tonight to recommend also Cheryl Trotsky that she be added to the commission. She lives in Supervisor District 1 and will make an excellent member of her committee. Her selection will satisfy the need for 3 Republicans on the commission for a balanced bipartisan committee and represent an important part of the Santa Barbara County community. Thank you so much for your time and patience. And this is Barbara Battistini.
Thank you, ma'am.
Can you hear me?
And we have Peggy Wilson.
Can you hear me?
Ms. Wilson, we can hear you this time.
Oh my God, I had to get on my phone. I'm so sorry. I do not know what's going on with my computer and Zoom. Anyways, thank you so much. And thank you for fitting me back in. So I'm also calling, my name is Peggy Wilson. Been a resident of Santa Barbara for about 50 years. So I've been here a while, and I'm calling tonight also to recommend my good friend, Cheryl Trotsky, to be added to the commission. As you know, she lives in Supervisor District 1, and she would be phenomenal for your committee. And it also satisfies the need for 3 Republicans on the committee, of course, because you want to have a balanced bipartisan committee. And I just thank you so much for your time and letting me speak. And I didn't see an agenda, so I'm assuming this was the right time to voice my approval for Cheryl. My other friends did, so I guess this was the right time.
We'll take it. Thank you very much. Does that conclude us?
That concludes all the hands that are raised in public comment. I do have some written comments that were submitted. And just for clarity, all of these were forwarded to the commissioners today. There was a email from Chris Scannell from Nelson Merksmeyer identifying Philip Seymour as co-counsel to Frederick Witcher and addressing Mr. Seymour's questions about conflicts of interest. There's a memo from Frederick Witcher regarding the conflict of interest allegations. And lastly, from Commissioner Katz, a letter of resignation that was dated February 2nd. And that's all.
Very well, thank you. We will close the general public comment. Mr. Johnson, you have a comment to make?
Just very briefly, that wanted to share information that the question was raised in public comment about Mr. Scannell's email. I just want to answer that. That came in, as you have seen, at 3:59 on Monday. What happens with emails is they actually go into a county email address and then get forwarded on. And no one at the county was there at 4 o'clock. They were doing other work. And so it didn't get forwarded on until Tuesday. So it wasn't that NDC screened this or that anything was withheld. No one saw that email until Tuesday.
Thank you for that clarification. Okay, we're going to go to item number 5. Mr. Churchwell, I will turn to you for a an introduction and maybe a quick update on the status. Presuming that you are ready to submit the details of the contract to us in closed session, but wanted to just give you a chance to bring everybody up to speed first. You're muted still.
Again, some people would be happy with that. So yes, we did, as per your instructions, your legal staff did hold negotiations with Stromwasser-Wucher, the proposed awardee of the contract. And everybody worked hard in the 48 hours we have, which seems like 12 hours, but and as you recall, Mr. Wucher, we gave him some research to do and some analysis to do, and all of that was done. You will see that you have a memorandum from Stromwasser and Wucher about an issue that was raised, and in my opinion, does handle it exactly as I had analyzed it, and I think to my satisfaction. We can talk about that more if anyone wants to. And in terms of the terms and conditions of the contract, I can just say in open session that the proposal was revised where the hourly rates are now lower. So we appreciate that. Where the highest rate was $5.75 is now $5.25 an hour, and the next highest rate was I'm looking for, let's see. The next highest rate was also lowered by $50 to $4.75. And everything else on that exhibit B stayed the same. So, and then on the not to exceed, the way we decided to handle that, we heard from both Nielsen, Merksmart, and Stromwasser-Wucher that sort of what litigation costs these days, and agreed with them that it wouldn't be fair to cap this not knowing we've already got one lawsuit threatened before we even get started. And we know that district maps are unfortunately attract lawsuits all the time. So the way we decided to handle that was a cap of 200,000 overall. And then if we get to the point where that's used up, then the commission and Stromwasser-Wucher would negotiate in good faith for an increase in that. And I thought that was the best way to handle it. So that's what we have for your consideration tonight. And we, some parts of it, we will discuss in closed session.
Steve?
Well, Commissioner Turley, you have a question?
Yeah, Steve, for the benefit of the public who's listening in, are you able to summarize the memorandum that was delivered by Stromwasser-Wucher, just so that they understand what we asked them to clarify?
What, Commissioner Turley, what I would like to do is to, if Mr. Wucher is available, is to have him kind of go through it, since he's the author of the memo. And then if you have any questions, I think what I would like to answer those. But since he's the author, I think it would be better for him to explain the way the ordinance, what parts of the elections code it incorporates by reference, what parts of the elections code it does not incorporate by reference. And I think that answers the question. The scope being narrower than apparently some of the commenters believe means we don't have to get into all of the details of his representation in an election contest of a supervisor back 12 years ago. So we don't need to get into those details just because it's not relevant. It's not, those facts don't matter under the ordinance. So if Mr. Wucher, I don't know, Ms. Tilton, if you can, the only way he could join us is through the public portal, I assume. So I don't know if you can see if he is there.
He is.
He is, and I think Dr. Tilton can promote him to a panelist temporarily. While that's happening, I would just reference the for the public that the memorandum that we're talking about is posted on the county website. If you'd like to pull it up.
And we do have a hand raised from the public. I don't know if now's the appropriate time or.
Yeah, we'll take public comment on this item after we've addressed it with the commission and then before we go to closed session. So
Mr. Wucher is now been designated as a panelist.
Good evening, Mr. Wucher. Welcome.
Hi. I don't see myself. Oh, there I am. Okay. Sorry.
Were you able to hear Commissioner Turley's question?
Yes, I was. And I heard Stephen's answer. And yeah, and I'm glad you pointed out. We provided this memo in short order in response to Stephen's suggestion that there were some concerns raised about that. And we did want to make it public because we wanted both all the commissioners and the public to be confident in our answer and let anybody have at it. But the short answer to the issue was, and let me back up. The question was raised whether there was a disqualifying interest due to the fact that we had represented a former supervisor during FAR in an election contest litigation back in from the 2008 election, 2009, 2010, and thereafter. Suggesting that there was a provision that said that if within the last 8 years, somebody had been a paid consultant to an elected official in a jurisdiction, that was disqualifying. The specific provision that they are talking about, or that appeared to be referenced, is Elections Code Section 2303D, as in David. Which does provide that a person shall not be appointed to serve on the commission if the person or his spouse has done any of the following within the 8 years preceding the person's application, specifically A, served as an officer of, employee of, or paid consultant to a campaign committee or a candidate for elective office of the local jurisdiction. So what we have is the state election law sets forth some requirements for commission members and certain things that are disqualifying to be a member of a local redistricting, independent or hybrid redistricting commission. The county ordinance also has certain provisions which add to what the state has, in some senses are duplicative of the state, that are found in section 2.10.9A, subdivision D4D. And subdivision 4, I'm going to lose all these, 5D says that not only the commissioners have to comply with those requirements, but anyone that the commission hires as a consultant has to comply with those requirements. So it goes beyond what state law is. The requirements in the city ordinance, in the county ordinance rather, that are explicitly laid out there apply to campaign contributions and things like that, being members of committees. None of that applies to us or apply to this representation. We have not donated to any candidates. We've not been associated with any committees that have donated to candidates and stuff. That's not it. But there is another provision that incorporates by reference certain provisions of the elections code and says that a member of the commission must also be eligible under the provisions of elections code section 23003C, as in Charlie. That provision applies and says that a person shall not be appointed to serve on the commission if the person or the family member has been elected or appointed to or has been a candidate for elective office of the local jurisdiction within the last 8 years. Again, that obviously does not apply to us. That is the only provision of section 2303C that has been incorporated into the county ordinance to apply to consultants for the commission. So this provision, as Mr. Churchwell pointed out, that talks about not being a paid consultant to a candidate during the last 8 years does not apply to a consultant to the commission, namely the council here. So that is the first line of defense, so to speak. We also lay out in the memo exactly what the facts were surrounding this representation and point out that really all the events that occurred were more than 8 years prior, that we were not paid by the supervisor. We were not a paid consultant to the campaign, and we really didn't satisfy any of the requirements of that other section in any event, but the section did not apply. So we had analyzed this prior to making the application and felt that there was no problem with it, and we hope you agree with it. I'm pleased to hear Mr. Churchwell say that he agreed with that. So we wanted to put that to rest because we want to start off on the right foot. Needless to say, I want you to start off on the right foot and give you, I guess, an example of our analysis and how we go about doing things and how we hope to serve you going forward.
Thank you. Commissioners, any questions? Very well.
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Nope, I just gonna say it looks like we don't have any questions. So Steve, I was going to just let you wrap up the introduction of this item, and then we will take any public comment related to it before we go into closed session to make a determination.
I think if anyone would like for me to share my screen and go through what Mr. Wucher, by the way, I wasn't able to speak with him until, I just realized it wasn't 48 hours. I wasn't able to speak to him until 3:30 yesterday and gave him the assignment of which, of course, we wanted him to look at this issue because he knows the facts better than anyone. And so I just want to thank him for doing that, which I know just based on doing a lot of research and writing myself would have taken into the wee hours of the morning to do that memo. And so anyway, very appreciative of that. And so anyway, my thought is, does anyone, Mr. Wucher mentioned a lot of different sections. Does anybody want me to just kind of share my screen and walk through the ordinance and show kind of what that was, or are we ready for public comment?
I think the written analysis was on the public website, but Ms. Twibell?
I was just going to say it doesn't matter because the time frame is way beyond. It's 8 years was the most amount of time, right? And it was beyond that. So does any of it matter anyway? I mean, it's good for analysis, but
right.
Does it count?
It's really the opposite. In other words, because subdivision D as in David does not apply, all those facts about the 2008 election contest are just irrelevant. So I'd rather do it that way because it's much simpler than just say C applies, the ordinance incorporates C by reference, but not D, all of those things. So we don't even have to kind of get into that and all the details of the litigation. I mean, we could, but I think it's just better. And again, what's difficult for Mr. Wucher is that we're sort of, there's innuendo and there's somebody saying this, and it's very difficult to address those things that are not, no one's just saying in black and white, this is wrong. He cannot be a consultant of the commission, right? It just sort of, I don't even know if anybody really raised that specific issue and misinterpreted that D does apply, right? We're just sort of trying to figure out, it's always so difficult to answer an issue that's very vague. I mean, right? So I thought Mr. Wucher, he included all of that just in case there were any questions. But the simple fact is that that provision, Elections Code Section 23003D, was not incorporated into the ordinance. And that's the sort of the end of the analysis for me.
Good. And again, the memo is available, and people can do that. I think we've answered the question adequately for the moment. So what I'd like to do is offer an opportunity for members of the public to make any comments related to the appointment of independent legal counsel prior to the commission going into closed session on this item. So Ms. Twibell, do we have any requests to speak?
I see no hands raised.
Very well. I think you spoke too soon.
We have Lee Heller followed by Andy Caldwell.
You have Ms. Heller then? Let's see her on the screen here coming in. There we go. Welcome back, Ms. Heller.
Chair Morris and Commissioner, sorry about that. I was waiting to be offered the chance to unmute since there's no point in speaking if only my dogs and cats can hear me. I want to echo what Mr. Churchwell said about the memo being pretty impressive on short notice. As an attorney, I can't imagine whipping that out quickly. And I think, again, there is no ground for concern or a legitimate claim of conflict of interest. I remember when the lawsuit happened back in 2008. It's a whole different line of election law. It was about supposed election fraud in the vote count, I think in Isla Vista, actually, and was dealt with repeatedly by the courts. But all of this significant legal work was done in 2009, going into 2010, I think the memo says. And everything after that was just really about getting fees. So, and I would also say that any attorney can represent any elected official in the case of an election fraud claim and not have it be partisan. In fact, the interesting thing about that case was that it was not actually Supervisor Farr who was being accused of fraud, but the way election law works, and Mr. Churchwell can probably explain this better than me, you sue the candidate even if, or the winner, even if you're not actually claiming that they're the person who committed fraud, because the fraud would have to have been committed sort of by the elections office or the people running the polls. So Supervisor Farr had to mount a defense, even though she was not considered the responsible party in reality. So I don't see any problem here. And again, I want to revert to what I said the other night, which is I thought their interview was incredibly impressive. They are very high powered. I wish I had a reason to hire them for my own purposes because they seem like really good lawyers. So thank you for that.
You're welcome. Thank you.
The next request to speak is from Andy Caldwell.
Good evening, Mr. Caldwell.
Good evening, Chair and members of the commission. You know, I kind of want to walk you back. There was a full court assault on Nielsen Merksimer, including Phil Seymour's 4 or 5 page brief as to why they were disqualified based on a nuance of the law. And you didn't know anything, and I didn't know anything, that Wucher too had a questionable background with regard to qualifications. So now we're kind of battling a negative because there wasn't a level playing field going into that deliberation. But I want to say to you that the election code 23003 is state law. The county could go in excess of state law, but they're not allowed to do less than state law. And in fact, the 8-year prohibition is in state law. And it specifically says that anybody that has served as a staff, a consultant, or a contractor in the jurisdiction can't be on the commission. And of course, it was the county's own rule that said anything that applies to the commission applies to the contractors. So they can't do, no matter what your counsel tells you or Wucher tells you, it doesn't matter if they incorporated it into the local ordinance, it is the prevailing law of the state for all independent redistricting commissions. And so here's the deal. If the way you look at this is, for instance, if Mr. McClintock had been a county supervisor's attorney, and that case was not over till 2013, because they were suing Wucher and Seymour were trying to get paid for representing Doreen Farr. If Mr. McClintock had been Doreen Farr attorney until 2013, could he say, well, I was a paid consultant and Doreen's not on the board anymore? It's within the 8 years. So you can't let Woocher be the authority to tell you, hey, it's all good here. It's just nuances. Because what apparently disqualified Nielsen Merksimer was less of a nuance. All what they were doing was a secretarial function for a client that had donated. They didn't donate. They were attesting that the donation was made in accordance with the law. That didn't rise to the level of that committee, as the attorney mentioned to you last week. So I hate bringing this up, but we didn't start this food fight. If you disqualify Nielsen, even though he was the lower bidder, you can't take Woocher when it's in violation of state law. So I don't know who's going to be the final say on this. Maybe you make your decision and then county council has to approve it in front of the board. But that court case that he was suing for fees for representing Doreen Farr up until 2013, the 8 years no longer applied.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate your input. Anyone else on the request list?
I'm not seeing any hands raised.
Very well. So commissioners, unless there's any other clarification questions that anybody has for Mr. Churchwell, at this stage, we will adjourn and go into closed session to deliberate on the potential appointment of independent legal counsel. We're short one commissioner. Looks like Janet hasn't come back yet. Okay. I'll give her just a moment. There we go. Good evening, everybody. We are back. We will call this meeting back to order at 7:25. And Mr. Churchwell, I'll ask you to report the decisions in closed session.
So the commission took no reportable action in closed session, but is now going to move to a discussion of, in open session, of the legal counsel contracts.
Very good. So commissioners, unless there's any discussion, further discussion about our recommendation for legal counsel, I would remind the public and the commissioners about the process. So the next step is for us to make a recommendation to the County Board of Supervisors, who have the final authority to approve the contract as negotiated. So if there is no further discussion, I would take a motion from the commission to that effect.
Make a motion. Oh.
Commissioner Romero made a motion. Commissioner Turley, I saw you jumping in. Can I count you as a second?
Sure. I will make a motion to recommend Stromwasser Woocher as our legal counsel to the Santa Barbara County Board of Supervisors.
Thank you. And a second?
Second.
Commissioner Romero seconds. Ms. Tilton, could you conduct a roll call?
Yes, Commissioner Tybell,
Aye.
Commissioner McClintock,
Aye.
Commissioner Turley,
Aye.
Commissioner Bradley,
Aye.
Commissioner Hudley,
Aye.
Commissioner Bray,
Aye.
Commissioner Ochoa, Commissioner Rios,
Aye.
Commissioner Olmedo,
Aye.
and Chair Morris.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously.
Very well. We're going to go to agenda item number 8, discussion and possible action regarding future agenda items for the benefit of the public. This will include a discussion about Commissioner Katz's submitted resignation and what agenda items we will put on future meetings to address that. Given that item, I would open it up for any public comment related to that particular issue. If there's some of the comments were made in the previous session. If there are others who wish to comment on this item, we'd take those now. Any takers, Ms. Tilton?
I see no hands raised at the moment.
Then we will bring it back to the commission. Commissioners, anybody want to get us started with future agenda items?
Well, Mr. Chair, I can jump in if no other commissioners
Please.
have other items. So one question, obviously with the resignation letter today, a future agenda item will need to be a replacement for Ms. Katz. So in order to get a jump on that, we would like to, as staff, set up interviews, presuming that the commission wishes to interview. So we'd look for direction from you on, number one, whether you want to interview potential replacements, and then who you'd like us to invite for those interviews. And I can show briefly, and I can back to this in more detail if you have questions. Let me see if I can put this on screen. So this is the showing the group of in the pool from District 1. The first 2 listed were selected for the commission, and then 2 have already been interviewed. So you can see by the ones over here. Professor Montello and Ms. Knudsen have already been interviewed. So that leaves the 2 at the end, and let's see. So we have 5 who have not yet been interviewed in the pool. So you can choose to invite all 7 to interview if you wish, or you can narrow that down however you wish. And then we'll set that up for the next meeting.
Commissioners, anybody have a recommendation about, so first of all, let's ask this question just to keep us on track. Is there agreement that we want to do interviews at our next regular meeting on the 22nd? Seeing general consensus around that issue. So with that assumption in place, does anybody have a recommendation about one or more of the candidates that you would like to have invited to interview?
I can put that list back up.
Yeah, Commissioner Twibell?
I would ask that the 2 Republicans be interviewed.
So that would be Mr. Scorso and Ms. Trotsky.
Yes.
Very good. Mr. Turley?
And I would also like us to consider the previous interviews from Daniel Montello and Claudia Knudsen.
By consider, do you mean they're kind of bring their videos back into the record, or do you want to invite them back for a second interview?
Bring their videos back to the record.
Okay, similar to what we did with Ms. Ochoa in our last one. Very good. Any other names that you'd like to add to that list? Okay, Mr. Johnson, I think you have your direction for that item. Commissioners, other than that, is there anything else you would like added to a future agenda item? I think we've got a running list of things we've been building, but is there anything that's not on that you'd like to add for our next meeting? Very good. Mr. Bradley.
I think it's not too soon to start thinking about how we're going to structure our outreach. And I think we should begin that process on our next meeting. I'm not sure where to begin with that. Perhaps we should start with the demographics that we feel we need to reach out to first, but that might be a good starting place. But I would like to see the ball rolling on that by our next meeting.
I know one of the things we'd asked in the past to be on the list was some discussion about budget. I think we kind of hinted at that with some of the discussion around the legal counsel, but maybe some clarification around what our budget would be for outreach and, process procedure for tapping into that. Mr. Johnson would be helpful.
Yeah, I'd also like to emphasize that since, as we've been told a number of times, our demographic data are going to be delayed, we're going to have to front load our process with a lot more outreach sooner rather than later. I think the usual expectation would have been to do that later on toward the summer, but we're probably going to have to dive in with that much sooner. So we should get going with that.
Commissioner McClintock and then Commissioner Turley.
So related to outreach and budget is the question of decision support tools. So I don't know if Mr. Johnson, would you be prepared to give us sort of a summary or update of the prospective tools you're thinking about in that regard next meeting, or should that wait for a future meeting?
We can certainly do kind of an introduction if there's time. I guess we'll put these things on the agenda with an understanding that depending on how long the interviews and deliberations about that go, they may be postponed to a future meeting. If that's okay with you?
Yep.
But yeah, there's a whole, we haven't really gotten to the substance of this commission's tasks yet, and the training and the organization and all that. So we can certainly plan to do the first steps of that, including kind of a big picture and the details. Not sure what just happened. Oh, and starting to get into some of the details of the outreaches that Commissioner Bradley's discussing.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm showing on the screen what we had listed in our last agenda packet.
Yeah, so it looks like we've kind of already touched on the first three, so that's probably a good start. Commissioner Turley, did you have a comment?
Actually, my fellow commissioner from District 2 and I were on the same page on what we were going to ask, so I'm good on my end.
Love it when everybody's in line. Commissioner Bradley.
In furtherance of the outreach effort, I think specifically what we really need to get to is digital access. I mean, this was something that came up in our presentation last week. Because of the COVID lockdown, we really are restricting some of our population to be able to get access. And so I think that should be at the top of our agenda. Outreach is a very general term, but let's really figure out how we're going to digitally reach out to populations who have very limited digital access. Please start there.
Very good. Anything else? Commissioner Twibell.
I was just wondering if we decided, or is there going to be a decision about when we're having our meetings?
Oh, what a great segue to number 9, future meetings. You all, commissioners, are aware that we attempted to poll the commissioners about alternative meeting dates. Dr. Tilton, do you want to touch on that?
Yeah, the results were very tight. Dr. Johnson could chime in as well. The initial survey and review for the public was to ask the commissioners a preferred day of the week, preferred time start on that particular day of the week, and then a monthly rotation, the first and third day of the week or the second and fourth day of the week. And the data were really tight. There was a leader, but it did not enable to have all of the commissioners participate at a specific day, time, and rotation.
Yeah, and I'll just summarize saying there is no date and time currently where everyone said they were available. So we will be circling back. We'll start with kind of harder to schedule commissioners and see where is there any flexibility.
Let's try this. What's the leading candidate?
I believe, Jeff, it's Wednesday.
Yeah, it was Wednesday. It was Wednesday, the first and third Wednesdays at 5:30.
By show of hands, is there anybody on the commission that's a blackout, that's an absolute no-go?
I might be kind of like tonight, Wednesdays clinically. It'll ease up. The other thing, I want to bring up, so my schedule kind of varies. The summer, much less of an issue, right? With like school board, clinical time, I can definitely carve out that evening. But right now through the spring, through COVID, I mean, I'm pushing to trying to make this right here. So it just depends. I might miss a couple or show up late a little bit if it's 5:30, but I will absolutely do my best to kind of carve that out if needed.
Does 6 or 6:30 help?
Yes, sir, it does.
Does 6 help?
Yeah, we could try 6. 6:30 would be better, but it's kind of the boat we're in now. A little bit earlier. I could probably try to push it up to 6.
Okay, I know the major conflict we were trying to deal with was the Monday night was problematic for at least one of our commissioners. So let's try that again. Wednesday at maybe I'd like to suggest 6. Ben, recognizing it might be tight for you, but to try to get us home at a little earlier hour on some of the long nights. Is there anybody that cannot make that work?
I have events that will most likely be scheduled on Wednesdays at 5:30, but they're not scheduled yet. So, and I can try to do my best to influence them to not be scheduled on first and third Wednesdays. So that's kind of just a full disclosure, but I will try to make it work.
Okay. Are you okay if for now we put that down, and
Absolutely.
life can change on all of us, right? So, so if that's the case, then according to my calendar, that would put so we'll meet again on the 22nd of February. We would then meet on the 3rd of March and the 17th of March. We'll go that far. Is that acceptable? All right. Commissioner Ochoa.
All right, on the 22nd, we're still doing 6:30. Are we doing 6 o'clock on the other 2 dates? Or are we doing 6 o'clock on all 3 dates?
No, so I think because we've
That's
kind of
fine.
noted, total everybody about the 22nd at 6:30, we'll probably stay there at 6 o'clock. Good clarification. Commissioners, that's the last item on our agenda. Anything for the good of the order before we let everybody go? Very good. With that, we'll return you to your home and your loved ones a little earlier than we did last time. Have a great evening, everybody.
Thank you.
Yeah.